A pleasant evening to all of my students. Welcome to the Contemporary World GE007. For today, we are going to discuss Module 3, Market Integration. Now, here is our learning objectives for this particular session. First is to define what is market integration. Second, to identify the world's major pre-trade areas. And lastly, to determine the brief history of the global integration during the 20th century. So brace yourself and let us start the session. Now, what do we mean by market integration? Market integration is happened when prices among the different locations or different or related goods follow similar patterns over a long period of time. This group of goods movement or group of foods move proportionally to one another. And when this relation is very clear among the different markets, it is said that markets are integrated. So again, market integration happens when prices among the different locations or related goods is following similar pattern over a period of time. So now, let us move into the different concept that somehow associated with market integration. First is the pre-trade agreement. When we talk about pre-trade agreement, it pertains to a pact between two or more nations that aims to reduce barriers to imports and exports among them. Under this policy, the goods and services can be brought and sold across international borders. So, as you can see, there is always a presence of international cross borders of goods and services with little or no government tariffs, no quotas, no subsidies, and prohibitions to inhibit their exchange. And also, the concept of free trade is the opposite of the protectionism or economic isolationism. Protectionism and economic isolationism, it happens when the country is regulating or imposing tariffs and limit and has its quota when it comes to importation of products and services. So that is why during our last conversation or our last session, we already reiterated that protectionism is the opposite of free trade. Another concept is tariffs. So, tariffs are taxes. These are taxes or duties to be paid on a particular class of imports or exports. It is being imposed by the government, enable for them to gain something or enable for the government to protect its um, domestic products when it comes to importation of products and services. Another concept we have here is the embargo. When we say embargo, these are the government instituted prevention of export to a certain country, official ban on trade or other commercial activity. Another thing is the economic sanction. This happens to a commercial and financial penalties that is being applied by one or more countries against a targeted group or individual. Next, we have the free trade areas. Free trade areas pertains to a group of countries within which tariffs and non-tariff trades barriers between the members are generally abolished. Meaning, within a specific region in the world, free trade areas happens when countries in that particular regions is joining together, enable for them to abolish or um, res- uh, regulate or abolish or regulate the restrictions perhaps with with no common trade policy towards non-members. So let us now see what is the world's free trade areas and where can we find them. The world's free trade areas are the following. We have the North American Free Trade Areas, commonly known as NAFTA, Association of Southeast Asian Nations Free Trade Areas, AFTA, Southern Common Market or Mercosur, and Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa. So, or COMESA. So, these are the world's free trade areas. Now, there are also what we call union and partnership agreements. This includes the following. First, the European Union or EU. Second, the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP. And lastly, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment or TTI. Now let us discuss the North American Free Trade Areas and its functions. This is a free trade area between the three member nations, the Canada, the US, and Mexico. This happens effective on January 1, 1994. So upon its establishments, it merely involved three nation country of Canada, United States of America, and Mexico. Although tariffs weren't fully abolished until 2008, by year 2014, a total trilateral merchandise trade exceeded to 1.12 trillion US dollars. Trade with Canada and Mexico supports more than 140,000 small and medium-sized businesses and over 3 million jobs in the US. Gains in Canada are reportedly even higher, with 4.7 million new jobs added since 1993. Canada is also the largest exporter of goods to the United States of America. In here, we could visualize or see that there is an interrelationship between Canada, US, and Mexico with regards to the importation and exportation of their goods or with regards to their commodities or goods and services. So whenever they do that, they could support the economy of one another, and within their own countries through exportation and importation of products and services, they could generate jobs for their citizens. Next is the Association of Southeast Asian Nations Free Trade Areas. So in here, we are going to determine the member countries of AFTA. The original members of AFTA were Brunei Darussalam, Indonesia, Malaysia, Philippines, Singapore, and Thailand. Later on, there are four countries that have subsequently joined, namely Vietnam, Laos, Myanmar, and Cambodia. The Association of Southeast Asian Nations Free Trade Area was signed on January 1992 in Singapore. The bloc has largely removed all export and import duties on items traded between the nations. Again, the very purpose of free trade is to abolish the tariff tax and quotas within the region. So in this particular example, the AFTA, um, all of the member countries within the region of Southeast Asian nations remove all export and import duties on items that is being traded between the region or between the member countries. It has also entered that into agreement with a number of other nations, including China, eliminating tariffs around 90% of imported goods. So in here, we could see that the Association of Southeast Asian Nations, or Free Trade Areas, or AFTA, is also in agreement with other countries that not included in the region. So they are very much open with that um, agreement. Next is Southern Common Market, or Mercosur. This is a Latin American single market. Its full members are Argentina, Brazil, Paraguay, and Uruguay. Venezuela is a full member but has been suspended since December 1, 2016. Meanwhile, Bolivia obtained its full membership on July 7, 2015. So, Mercosur is a single Latin American market. So, most of its member countries, as we can see, can be found in South American region. This was established by the Treaty of Asuncion in 1991 and Protocol of Oro Preto in 1994. Common Market of Eastern and Southern Africa, or COMESA. It, uh, it is formed or established in December 1994. This organization aimed to develop natural and human resources to benefit the region's population. Its primary focus, according to the United Nations, is to establish a large economic and unit to overcome barriers to trade. The member states of COMESA are the following. Countries can be found in Eastern and Southern Africa, like Burundi, the Comoros, the Democratic Republic of Congo, the Djibouti, Egypt, Eritrea, Ethiopia, Kenya, Libya, Madagascar, Malawi, Mauritius, Rwanda, Sudan, Swaziland, Seychelles, Uganda, Zambia, and Zimbabwe. COMESA ultimately aims to remove all barriers to intra-regional trade. Intra-regional because as we can see, COMESA is composed of Eastern and Southern Africa, starting with preferential tariffs and working towards a tariff-free, common, and economic union. Now let's proceed to the union and partnership. So we have this example, the European Union. The European Union, it is a single market, which is a free trade area in that it has no limits, no tariffs, no quotas, or taxes on trade. But a single market allows the free movement of goods, services, capital, and people. Yun naman talaga yung purpose or aim ng free trade in all parts of the world, either be in the different regions or block that has free trade commonalities. There should be always a flow of goods and services, capital, and also people. The European Union strives to remove non-tariff barriers to trade by simply applying the same rules and regulation to all its member states. The region-wide regulations on everything from working hours to packaging are an attempt to create a level playing field. Most of the member countries, or should I say the member nation or states in European Union is more or less the countries in the European continent. The Trans-Pacific Partnership. This partnership or the Trans-Pacific Partnership or TPP was a proposed free trade agreement among 12 Pacific Rim economies. The agreement would have lowered tariffs and other trade barriers among Australia, Brunei, Canada, Chile, Japan, Malaysia, Mexico, New Zealand, Peru, Singapore, United States, and Vietnam. So, the above country or the countries that we already mentioned are the members, including member countries that includes in the 12 Pacific Rim economies. Next is the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership. The Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership is a deal currently being negotiated between United States and European Union. If this reach or realized, it would be the world's largest trade agreement that will cover at least 45% of the global gross domestic product. So, if this will become successful, the Transatlantic Trade and Investment Partnership will gain almost half of the global gross domestic product. Let us see the role of international financial institution in the creation of the global economy. It is very important that upon realizing the global economy or world economy, every countries must have their sufficient funds or um, finances or even capital. So in this particular slide, we are going to know and see how important the financial institution is in creating or in the creation of our world economy. Because as we already discussed last time around, global economy is not a single country's activity. It is a an economic activity of all the countries or several countries throughout the globe. So the IFIs, or the International Financial Institution, it is a chartered by more than one country and therefore are subject to international law. Its owner or stakeholders are generally the national governments all throughout other international institutions and other organizations occasionally figured as stakeholders. So since this is a um, group perhaps or a corporations, its owner is called to be as the stakeholders, and these stakeholders are coming from generally coming from the national government all throughout other international institutions and organizations. The most prominent IFIs are creations of multiple nations. Although some bilateral financial institutions created by two countries exist and technically as an example of IFIs. The best known IFIs were established after World War II to assist the reconstruction of Europe and provide the mechanism for international cooperation in managing the global financial system. In Module 2, we already discussed that there are two financial institutions that being created in an effort to have a longer lasting peace in the world and for the economy of the countries to recover right after the World War II or the series of wars during that time. So the most popular and the most or best known IFIs are the following. We have the International Monetary Fund and the Multicultural Development Banks, um, that is divided into or classified, being classified into five. In module 2, we already discussed this international financial institution or the creation of international financial institutions as a result into the Bretton Woods system, when the world leaders gathered and they agreed into the establishment of these two. So the International Monetary Fund or IMF and Multicultural Development Banks or MCDB, which is being classified into five different groups. First is World Bank Group, second African Development Bank, third Asian Development Bank, fourth Inter-American Development Bank, and European Bank for Reconstruction and Development. So let us now know the member composition of the international financial institutions or IFIs. A member is only sovereign countries are admitted as a member owner. So all throughout the world naman, a nation or a country has its own sovereignty. And therefore, with this, I think a majority of the countries nowadays is member of these different international financial institutions since we have or they have sovereignty. Second, broad country memberships rather to include borrowing developing countries and developed donors countries. So in here, we could see that there are two classifications of countries being mentioned, the developed or advanced and developing countries. Third, membership in regional development banks include countries around the world as members, but not limited countries from the region. And lastly, has its own independent legal and operational states. These are the main objectives of the international financial institutions. For International Monetary Fund, they provide temporary financial assistance to its member countries to help ease balance of payments adjustment or when the country is facing credit crisis. Since IMF is the last resort for borrowing, it is a global lender. Next is the multicultural development banks. This provides financing for development to developing countries through long-term loans, which maturities is up to 20 years at interest rates way below market rates. Funding comes from the international capital members and relent to borrowing government in developing countries. Second, very long-term loans, sometimes called credits with maturities at 30 to 40 years. At interest rates below market rates, funding for loans come from direct contributions by government in the donor countries. Grant financing by some cultural development banks for technical assistance, advisory service, or project preparations. So these are the main objectives of the two financial institutions, the International Financial Monetary Fund rather, and multicultural development banks that is being classified into five subgroups. Now let us proceed into the global corporations. When you say global corporation, it is known as a global economy or in support to global economy. It is coined from the base term global, which means around the world. It is one that operates in more than one country. This is generally referred to as multinational corporation or MNCs. It is a company that operates in two or more countries that leveraging the global environment to approach varying markets in attaining revenue generation. These international operations are pursued as a result of strategic potential provided by technological developments, making new markets a more convenient and profitable pursuit both in sourcing production and pursuing growth. So these global corporations, we can find them in the different countries around the globe. And through these global corporations, it helps to generate markets and also to generate new jobs for those citizens or those people that in need of jobs. Now, here is the significance of multinational corporations. The multinational corporations, these international operations, are therefore a direct result of either achieving higher levels of revenue or a lower cost structure within the operation or value chain. So, as we already discussed in the previous modules, the multinational corporations or the global corporations is investing a lot in the developing areas or developing countries for the purpose of expanding their businesses internationally and also um, for them to have this to benefit from the lower cost of production and operation. And also, it includes the new source of raw materials since raw materials is coming from the developing and underdeveloped countries. The multinational corporations operates often to attain economies of scale through mass producing in external markets that is substantially cheaper cost or economies of scope through horizontal expansion into new geographic markets. If this successful or if successful, this both result in positive effects on the income statement, either larger revenue or stronger margin, but contain the innate risk in developing these new opportunities. How can we know or how can we determine the importance of global corporation? The importance of global corporation is that they operating in more than one countries or in more countries. That means access to more consumer or customers, which means more revenue and profit. The more customer or consumers and more countries to operate with, it will result into much higher revenue and profit. If you sell goods, higher volumes can reduce costs. Totoo naman, that is true. Second, these global corporations is operating in global markets. That is also a good way to reduce risk and to leverage new opportunities. So since these global corporations is really expanding and working into the different markets or global markets, so it is a better way to reduce risk and to provide new opportunities since they are exploring all the possibilities enabled for them to expand their businesses. And that's the end of our presentation, this session. So for your prelim activity number 3, you may proceed to our Google Classroom and start submitting your output in Google Classroom. Once again, this is your instructor, Sir Libres. Thank you so much for listening and have a good day and keep safe, everyone. Thank you and God bless you.